In breaking news, the Manhattan DA's office announced that the grand jury has indicted former President Donald Trump. Very few details were available at press time, but according to a report in the Associated Press, a Manhattan grand jury voted to indict Donald Trump on charges involving payments made during the 2016 presidential campaign to silence claims of an extramarital sexual encounter. The indictment, confirmed Thursday by Joe Tacopina, a lawyer for Trump, and by other people familiar with the matter, according to the Associated Press, follows years of investigations into Trump's business, political, and personal dealings. Tacopina said in a statement referring to Trump, quote, "He did not commit any crime. We will vigorously fight this political prosecution in court," closed quote. The Manhattan DA's investigation centered on money paid to Stormy Daniels and to former Playboy model Karen McDougal to silence possible claims that they had had extramarital encounters with him. The former president has denied any wrongdoing and repeatedly has attacked the investigation as politically motivated. He is expected to surrender to authorities next week, although details were still being worked out, according to this report. In bringing the charges, the Manhattan DA is embracing an unusual case that had been investigated by two previous sets of prosecutors, both of whom declined to seek indictment. In the weeks leading up to this indictment, the former president attacked the case on social media. Meanwhile, the district attorney in Atlanta has for 2 years investigated claims that Trump and his allies attempted to meddle in Georgia's 2020 vote count, and a Justice Department special counsel is investigating Trump's storage of classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago home in Florida. The fate of the present investigation seemed uncertain. Earlier in March, the Manhattan DA apparently invited the former president to testify before a grand jury. His attorneys declined the invitation, as is usual, but a lawyer closely allied with the former president briefly testified with respect to the credibility of Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen. At issue is a payment made by Cohen to Stormy Daniels of about $130,000 that was made late in the 2016 campaign. It was reportedly about an alleged sexual encounter between the two that took place 10 years prior, after they had met at a celebrity golf tournament. Earlier in 2016, Cohen allegedly also arranged for the publisher of the National Enquirer to pay Playboy model Karen McDougal $150,000 to squelch her claim of a Trump affair. Federal prosecutors in New York ultimately charged Cohen in 2018 with violating federal campaign finance laws. They argued that the payments amounted to impermissible assistance to Trump's presidential campaign. Cohen pleaded guilty to those charges and unrelated tax evasion charges and served some time in federal prison. Trump was reportedly implicated in some court filings as having knowledge of the arrangements, but prosecutors at the time refused to bring criminal charges against him. The former Manhattan DA, Cyrus Vance Jr., then took up the investigation in 2019. While that investigation initially focused on the money payments to the two women, Vance's prosecutors moved on to other matters, including an examination of Trump's business dealings and tax strategies. Vance ultimately charged the Trump Organization and its CFO with tax fraud related to fringe benefits paid to some of the company's top executives. The current Manhattan DA campaigned on a promise to, quote, get Trump, closed quote. He hired longtime white-collar prosecutor Matthew Colangelo to investigate and convene a new grand jury. Cohen became a key witness, meeting with prosecutors nearly 24 times and providing other evidence before the grand jury. Trump has termed the investigation the greatest witch hunt in history, and we'll have more on that tomorrow. Earlier this week, the former president was interviewed by Fox News' Sean Hannity, and he addressed the pending indictment.
Mr. President, great to see you again.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you for doing this. As reported, as you know, you're facing a lot of legal challenges. In your opinion, does this help you or hurt you in terms of your chances to win in 2024?
Well, if you listen to the fake news media, it helps. because they're all saying it's a scam. Even people that don't like me are saying this is a terrible thing to do for our country. I don't know whether it helps or hurts. I can tell you, in my opinion, it's a new way of cheating on elections. It's called election interference. What they're doing is, if they can't win at the ballot box, because I'm leading everybody by a lot in the polls, for every Republican, frankly, and every Democrat by a lot, including Biden by a lot. And they can't beat you that way. They're going to do this kind of stuff. This has never been done like this before in the history of our country to this extent. People are pleading with the prosecutor, don't do it, don't do it, it's wrong. Even Democrats, even people that traditionally are not exactly my fans are saying, don't do it, because I didn't do anything wrong. I did nothing wrong.
Let me ask you this then. And I thought about this last week. You were the President of the United States, and I saw your post on Truth Social, and I read the reports in the New York Times, and I saw pundits all over media speculating that you were going to be arrested. That would mean you'd be arrested.
A couple of weeks ago.
You'd be arraigned.
Yeah.
That there'd be a mugshot, you'd be fingerprinted, and maybe even handcuffed. Now, when you think about being at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and juxtapose it to that, how do you deal with that?
Well, I deal with it. We're dealing with very dishonest people. We're dealing with thugs. We're dealing with people I actually believe that hate our country. Last night I had a rally with tens of thousands of people. Like, the press admitted there were at least 25 or 30,000 people. That means you can double it, at least in Texas, Waco, Texas. And it was like a love fest. It was incredible. And at the same time, these are people that really feel that they've been hurt by the way this country is being run. Look at what, in Texas, as an example, in Arizona, look at what they're going through at the border. But that's really affected all that just happened to walk through Texas and Arizona. It's affecting every state in the union. It's affecting our country. We have people pouring. I mean, I predict at the end, because they're giving phony numbers, they're giving fake numbers. I predict at the end of the year, it'll be 15 million people. That's larger than New York State. Will come in here from mental institutions, insane asylums, as they used to call it, from prisons. You know, the prisons are being emptied out all over South America, and they're being dropped. The people are being dropped into our country. The mental institutions are being emptied out all over South America, but much more than that, all over the world. And they're traveling in through our southern border. I had the strongest, safest southern border in recorded history. There was nothing even close, including for drugs. You know, drugs are coming in at the rate of 10 times what they were 3 years ago. Think of that. Our country, the people are really hurt by it.
I'll get into the economy, I'll get into immigration, energy, and all of that in a second. These are important issues because the country has changed dramatically in just a little over 2 years.
It's true.
I want to ask you about this. You're dealing with 3 major investigations. Last week reports, I want to hand you 2 documents, and I'll explain what they are in a second.
Yeah.
So last week reports in the press, Alvin Bragg's office, the Manhattan DA, is in total complete chaos, disagreement regarding your case. Monday of last week, Bob Costello gives devastating testimony in terms of, if you're looking for an indictment from the grand jury.
To the other side.
One of the letters I gave you is from February of 2018, yes. Michael Cohen's lawyer. Yeah. And that was exculpatory towards you. Totally. And your company and the campaign. And lastly, TMZ had a report. They brought it back out that I saw, and it was in the Daily Mail, Washington Post. And the second piece that I put up, and we'll put it up on the screen, is Stormy Daniels' denial in writing that you ever had a relationship. Yeah. So my question is this.
And denied it on many other occasions, too. I never had a relationship with her. I never had an affair with her. It's all made up.
So here's my question. So with all this information that came out in your favor, you talked about death and destruction. And then the baseball bat picture next to Alvin Bragg, and you did take that down. And my only question is, why open yourself up to criticism?
You have to understand that when the story was put up, I put up a story. We didn't see pictures. We put up a story that was very exculpatory, very good story from the standpoint of what we're talking about. And they put up a picture of me And you know where I was holding the baseball bat? It was at the White House. Make America, Buy America, because they did a lot of Buy America things. And this is a company that makes baseball bats. Then they put next to that picture a picture of Alvin Bragg. I didn't do it. They did it. These were two separate pictures. I was promoting Made in America. You make these baseball bats instead of sending over to Japan and China and all other places where they're made. This was a company, good company, that makes baseball bats and other things like that in America. They took that picture from the White House, and they put it up, and then they put a picture of Alvin Bragg up. Look, here's a letter from Stormy Daniels saying we never had an affair. Here's a letter from a very highly respected gentleman, Stephen Ryan, a very highly respected firm, McDermott, Will, and Emery, but Stephen Ryan's respected. He writes a letter saying everything I said was right, everything that his client, this is his lawyer, not my lawyer, and Bob Costello is one of the most respected lawyers anywhere in the country. He served in the government at the highest positions, all of that. He went in because he witnessed. He was a lawyer for Michael Cohen. He went in because he saw what Michael Cohen was saying, and he said, that's a lie. That's terrible what he's saying.
He was on my show last week.
I know that, and I thought he was amazing and fantastic. And he's doing that out of civic duty. He's not doing that for any reason. I don't know Bob Costello, by the way. I don't know him. I know he represents people that I'm close to in some ways, but I have to tell, I don't know him. I know this, he's a highly respected person, and he couldn't stand to see, this was his line, he couldn't stand to see this guy who's already a convicted, I mean, he's a felon, he's been to jail, and this is on stuff not having to do with me. His reputation is terrible. Now, before all of this happened, his reputation was he was a normal lawyer. So it made sense to use somebody like that. They always like to say a fixer. He was a fixer. They use that term. He was a lawyer, but he was one of many, many lawyers that I used.
That letter goes on to say, in a private transaction before the U.S. presidential election, Mr. Cohen used his own personal funds to facilitate the $130,000 payment to Ms. Clifford. Neither the Trump organization nor the Trump campaign was a party to the transaction with Ms. Clifford, and neither reimbursed Mr. Cohen for payment directly or indirectly, and that they go on to say neither Cohen or his LLC made any in-kind contributions to you, your campaign for president, or any presidential campaign committee, and that he was not a government employee at the time, and the payment in question does not constitute a campaign contribution. That's their star witness.
We will continue to cover this as it develops. For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.